Every Shabbat, sometimes before we light the Shabbat candles, sometimes in different families, sometimes right after saying the blessings over wine and bread, after Kiddush or after Motzi, we say a blessing. We bless our children. In every home, in the Jewish tradition, this is one of the most famous blessings. We gather around the table, we bring our children around us, and we bless them. At Bet Aleph, over the last few years, we have actually made this one of our traditions as well. At the end of services, as we will do tonight, we will turn to each other and bless one another and bless our children who have come to play with us tonight. The formula is a formula we got from biblical times. In fact, it just was in the Torah portion a few scrolls back, a few turns of the scroll back a couple weeks ago, when Aaron and his sons are ordained into the priesthood. God tells Aaron that part of his job is going to be to bless the nation assembled. And as he blesses, there are specific words that he and his sons will need to say. And the Torah says, "Thus shall you bless the children of Israel. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha." God is that through which you are blessed. It's very interesting because in saying those words, those who are, the person itself saying those words is announcing that it is not actually him or her saying the words, but through him or her the words are flowing. The Eternal One is that which blesses you and keeps you always. But on Shabbat, we had another blessing before that, before we say that sentence. And in that blessing, we name the names of the heroes in Torah after which we say the blessing. So when we gather next to our sons, we say, "May God make you like Ephraim and Menasheh." When we gather next to our daughters, we say, "May God make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel." And in fact, the male blessing with Ephraim and Menasheh is also biblical. It comes from the moment in the book of Genesis when Jacob is about to bless his grandsons, the sons of Joseph, Ephraim and Menasheh. And it says in the Torah, "By you will the children of Israel offer blessing, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Menasheh." Some time ago, as we began this practice of blessing each other and invoking the names of Ephraim and Menasheh, invoking the names of Sarah, Rivka, Leah, and Rachel, one of the members came to me and said, "You know, it's a lovely little practice, a little ritual we do, but who are these people? Like, and what are we invoking their names? What are their names? What do they mean? What do these people stand for? What are the energies that we are inviting in the moment of blessing?" And so for months, I've been waiting to tell you. And tonight is the night. So we'll do it in several stages. So we know a lot really about our four mothers: Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel. We know a lot because their stories from time to time is shared in the different passages of the Torah. And there are many commentaries that actually unfold and unpack some of those passages. We know them through their story. We know them through their words, the words they say, and the words often that they don't say. We know them through their actions. We know them through their reactions. We know them through what they give, and we also know them through what they take. All four of them are very complex characters. Characters who live through the most challenging human lives. All of them born of challenging upbringings, all of them from pagan families. But all of them also reflecting, I think, beautifully the infinitely nuanced and multifaceted aspect of womanhood. They are daughters, sisters, cousins. They are wives and mothers. They are great leaders, fierce competitors. All of them spoke to God directly, and God speaks to them directly as well. If one can say something about them, is that they're not whatsoever, the tent dwellers women. They really are the opposite of that. Take Sarah. We'll start with Sarah, for example, You think of Sarah. First of all, we meet Sarah. She's already pretty advanced in age. She and her husband, Abraham. And Abraham, we talk a lot about Abraham because he's the one who hears the call, Lech Lecha. Go far, go to the place that I will show you. Leave everything behind. Leave all your past behind, the people you knew, the life you had, your home, everything, and go on this journey. And I'm not going to tell you where you're going. Just trust. So we say, wow, Abraham, wow, he was able to do that. What we don't know is that Sarah was able to do exactly the same thing because she had to follow. Actually, I don't think she followed. I think she led. She embraced this crazy promise from that God who spoke. She not only embraced, but she ran with it. She took it on as her own. And she wasn't afraid. She's one of those characters that is really adventurous. Leave everything behind. Your family, your mother, your father, your life. She also left everything behind. Talk about courage, temerity. That's Sarah. Mother courage. She gets to Canaan, and then there's the famine, and she and her husband have to find refuge in Egypt. And Abraham is concerned that his life is in danger. And so Sarah takes it into her own hands in a kind of a self-sacrificing way to protect the life of her husband. She takes on Pharaoh. But Sarah is also more than that. Sarah is the woman who will be barren 2/3 of her life, and to be barren in a society that prized children and how big your clan, your tribe was. That was a challenge that she had to face throughout 2/3 of her life. Sarah is also the woman which has a great sense of humor, who finds the irony in things, and the woman who laughs in the face of God. Laughs when God announces that at 90 she will bear a child. She laughs at God's face. But also Sarah is the woman who knows how to move the plot forward. She's the one in charge of the household. Let's make no mistake here. She's the one who sees, for example, that when Hagar's son, Ishmael, is metzachek in Hebrew, is seeking to overtake her son, Isaac, so that through Ishmael and not Isaac, the blessing will continue. She's the one who takes ownership of that moment, takes leadership, and throws Hagar and her son away. Banishes them. Even though Abraham opposes it, she has God on her side. That's Sarah in a nutshell. Talk about leadership. You know, in Kabbalah, all the main characters of the Torah are also kind of written in the Kabbalistic tree of life. During the holiday of Sukkot, we invite those energies of all of our matriarchs and patriarchs into the Sukkah according to the tracing of the Kabbalistic tree of life. For those of you who don't know much about the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life is a map of awakening, a pathway to awakening. It's a 10-step process through which we are to open and shed layers of identity in order to awaken to the truth of who we are. There are 10 stations, and you move from the physical to the emotional, to the mental, and eventually to the transcendental as you climb up the Kabbalistic tree. As you climb down the Kabbalistic tree, it is the path of manifestation, the path of creation, the path of embodiment. It's the opposite of the path of transcendence. And in our tradition, each station, each of the 10 sephirot, each of the 10 stations has a certain quality that is connected to a certain practice. And each of the 10 sephirot, each of the 10 stations also is assigned one of the characters, the main characters in Torah. So Sarah is Gevurah. Sarah is the quality of strength, obviously, of perseverance, the quality of judgment and discernment, the quality also of restraint. You know, Gevurah is the sephirah that receives the divine energy and is able to say, stop, enough, dayenu, right? And Sarah is really good at creating those moments where it's like, this is enough now. So it's very interesting to see how each of those women are plotted also on the Kabbalistic tree of life. So that's Sarah. Then we have Rivka. Rivka also a powerful woman in her own right. The first we meet Rivka, she's the embodiment of compassion and kindness. She meets Abraham's servant who has gone in search of a wife for Isaac, Abraham's son. And she gets to the well. He gets to the well to give water to his camels that he's traveling with. And Rivka appears, and she's the one with great compassion, great kindness that reaches to him and brings water to his camels and invites him home to her family. But Rivka is also the woman who takes her life into her own hands. When there is a conversation happening of whether or not Rivka should go with the servant of Abraham to marry Isaac, the brothers and her father ask her if she wants to go. It's one of those rare cases, and Rivka says, yes, I will go. Maybe she wanted to get away from home, who knows, but yes, I will go. She's the master of her own life. And she also struggles. She's also one of those characters that is barren. But she's a healer. She's a healer. It says in the Torah that as she marries Isaac, she heals his wound, his mourning heart, because he just lost his mother. Rivka never meets her mother-in-law. She dies before they can meet. But she's so the mirror image of Sarah in so many ways. And like Sarah, she struggles because of her barrenness. And she faces adversity with great beauty and poise. And then she becomes pregnant. Another miracle. But this time she's pregnant with twins. And those twins are wrestling inside of her. And she experiences pain. Physical pain. And she stands tall in the face of that pain. Also owning the miracle within her and the furthering of the blessing of the tribe of Abraham. Rivka is also a little bit of a planner, manipulator. She's also the master of her house. Isaac is a little kind of a weak kind of man, and she really rules that house, that camp. And she even goes so far in order to protect her favorite son, Jacob. She goes so far as to betray her husband by lying and helping Jacob get the blessing of the firstborn from Isaac. She betrays Isaac in order to further the story and have the blessing go through Jacob and not through Esau. And then she also betrays her other son, helping Jacob escape as Esau was about to kill him. So she can be also kind of plotting. And this is what is interesting is that in the Kabbalistic tree of life, her place is at Tiferet. So Tiferet is the heart space, is the central sephirah through which all the other sephirot actually are connected. Is the heart chakra in the Tibetan tradition, right? And she's the heart space because she brings together in her being both the energies of Gevurah, of strength, of discernment, of judging, of plotting, but also the energies of Chesed, which are energies of kindness and compassion. And she holds both aspects in herself. And that's Rivka. Now we have to finish with the feminine side with Leah and Rachel. Oy, Leah and Rachel. Talk about women who are faced with most challenging lives. Born, as far as we can tell, in a very dysfunctional family with a greatly narcissistic father. So narcissistic, in fact, that he uses the two daughters as pawns, as bait, really, to enslave Jacob for 20 years so that Jacob could help him, Laban, grow his company, grow his flock, grow his family, and become wealthy. Jacob is in love with Rachel. But Laban makes a deal with Jacob that he would work for him 7 years for his first daughter. And on the evening of their wedding, he gives him Leah instead of Rachel. And then tells him, you have to work for me another 7 years if you want to actually have the woman you wanted to marry in the first place. Can you imagine what it must have felt like to be Leah? She's unloved. She's forced to marry a man that doesn't love and doesn't care for her. And then she has to live with her sister, and for 20 years still in the home of her narcissistic father. What happens was predictable. the two sisters are getting into this Cold War-like fight between them. As to who will be able to win over the heart of their husband. And talk about resilience. Talk about facing adversity and taking responsibility and moving forward. Talk about being combative. These are the qualities of these two women in their fight with each other. And they fight by giving birth to children. One kid at a time, they're trying to win their husbands over. Ultimately, at the end of this disaster of 20 years, they are able to leave Lavan and his encampment and break on their own. And they take somewhat of a symbolic revenge against their father by stealing his favorite idol as they leave. And then you can see that the relationship between the two sisters eases. There's kind of a truce. There's kind of a peace. They get along together better, and unfortunately it doesn't last long because Rachel dies in childbirth, giving birth to her second child as they were traveling, and she's buried on the side of the road. And Leah is going to raise that child like her own. Leah is going to really become the matriarch of the family. In fact, she's buried, as the story goes, with the other matriarchs, with Sarah and with Rebecca, as well as the three patriarchs in Hebron, in the cave of the Machpelah, the patriarch's tomb and the matriarch's tomb. She's buried there. And their place on the Kabbalistic tree of life is fascinating. Fascinating. They both represent the Shekhinah. Both of them represents the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is the power, divine, feminine presence. That's what the Shekhinah is. And there are two places on the Kabbalistic tree of life when the Shekhinah appears. The first one is at Binah, which is the third highest of all the 10 Sefirot, in the transcendental realms of consciousness. That is the Shekhinah Elyonah, and that's where Leah is. That's where the rabbis placed Leah, in the highest of the highest spheres. And she is the symbol of the great birther of universe. At Binah, the seed of creation Leah is pregnant with the seeds of creation that will unfold later on. She is the energies that sweeten the harshness, that neutralizes the bitterness. She's a peacemaker. And she's the great transcendental mother of all. Now, Rachel is the Shekhinah Tachtona, the Shekhinah that manifests at Malchut, which is the lower of all the Sefirot in the Kabbalistic tree of life. Malchut is this level of consciousness. This is the Shekhinah. This moment, this space, this moment in which we live is the Shekhinah, is the indwelling divine presence. We are all expression of the divine feminine presence. All of this world, the birthing reality. And this is the quality of Rachel. She's the great mother. She's the creative force that birth is this world in which we are. Fascinating to see those two women embodying the divine feminine itself in two polar opposites. So it's fascinating, you can play with those archetypes, those feminine archetypes. They are there to really help us in our own journey. Sometimes we need to invoke maybe a little more of a Sarah within ourselves. And embody those attributes of strength, discernment, of courage, temerity. Maybe that's something we need more in our lives. Maybe we have too much of that in our lives. Maybe we need to invite in our lives then maybe the energies of Rivka, more balanced. To have the strength, to have the courage, but also to balance that out with compassion and with kindness. So we can call up those feminine archetypes and work with them and invite them into our lives and have conversations with them and help them, let them guide us as we continue to explore on our journey of self-discovery. Now, I talked a lot about all those women archetypes, but what about the men? There's two men that we invoke every time we bless our children, that we bless each other, Ephraim and Menasheh. Well, with Ephraim and Menasheh, we are in trouble. We are in trouble because contrary to the four foremothers, there is nothing at all in Torah about these two characters. Besides the quote that I quoted earlier, where we see Jacob blessing them, obviously the announcement of their birth and their naming, that's pretty much it. There's nothing else really that we can hang our dvar on that we can find in Torah. So we have to look for other resources. Thankfully, we are the inheritor of a 3,000-year tradition, so you are bound to find someone somewhere who talked about Ephraim and Menasheh, and obviously you do. There's a lot of commentaries, and there is also Midrash, and you have to love Midrash. Midrash is great. For those of you who don't know what Midrash is a bunch of rabbis who got together and wrote stories about the stories. Because the Torah is so pithy sometimes. You have the beginning of a story and then it moves on to the next stage and there is nothing in between. There's this gap. Like we were talking about Abraham earlier, right? There are 3 lines about Abraham and his life at the end of one Torah portion, and he married Sarah, and his father was so-and-so, and the next line is, God tells Abraham, Lech Lecha. And there's nothing in between. It's like, how did we get to, and Abraham was born and married Sarah too, and now God is telling him when he's late in his life to leave everything behind. So the rabbis have to fill in the blank. And so they're going to write stories to close the gaps. They're like the stories written with invisible ink in between the lines of the Torah. And that's where you find Ephraim and Menasheh in those books. Ephraim, let's start with him. His name is fascinating. His name means to be fruitful. And the rabbis are in love with Ephraim. They make him the head of the yeshivas. If there was such a thing in Judaism, he would be the patron saint of the yeshiva movement. But we call him the forefather of the yeshiva movement. That's more kosher. They describe him as humble and learned. One who dwells in the tent and studies the books. He's the intellect. He's the intellect. And that makes sense because he's the one that Jacob blesses the first. And according to the Midrash, Jacob was the original Torah studier before there was a Torah. The Midrash is telling us that Jacob actually went to a yeshiva for years when he was a kid and studied all the books of Moses when Moses hasn't been born yet. But never mind that. It doesn't matter because it works. And so that's why maybe, at some level it works. One of the greatest commentaries by Rashi is the one of the greatest rabbis that ever lived. And I don't like Rashi because he's French, but he was French. But he is the quintessential commentator on the Torah, and one of the comments that he made was that there is no chronological order in Torah. You cannot read the Torah as a history book. So if linear chronology cannot be attached to Torah, then it makes absolute sense that Jacob could have gone and studied the 5 books of Moses before Moses was born. There's no problem with that. No problem with that. But that explains why Jacob blesses Ephraim first, even though he's the second-born. Maybe because he had this heart connection with him, because he too was a mama's boy, or he too was a tent dweller or a student of the word. That's Ephraim. Menasheh. Menasheh also has a fabulous name. His name means that which helps me let go. Really, that which helps me let go. That which helps me transcend. That's Menasheh's name. Joseph named him that because his firstborn son symbolized his letting go of his past. He was now an Egyptian. For all intent and purposes, he had become an Egyptian. He just married Osnat, which was the daughter of Pharaoh. And so that firstborn son was his way of saying, I am now letting go of who I was. But I see it at a more deeper level, a more spiritual level. Menasheh is the one who lets go, the one who transcends. As much as his brother is the intellect, is the student of the Torah, Menasheh is the Kabbalist. Menasheh is the meditator. Menasheh is the mystic. The Midrash tells us that he was working side by side with his father Joseph at the court of Pharaoh because he served as a translator. When people came to Egypt in search of food, mostly according to the story, from different parts of the Middle East, they each had different languages, and somehow Menasheh was the one who was able to translate their languages so that his father could understand. But what it means to me is that the Midrash is trying to tell us that Menasheh was a mediator, was a gatherer, was a connector. That's who Menasheh is. And they're also, it's interesting, all of those names, the 4 mothers, or Ephraim and Menasheh, they're all born of not Hebrew mothers. They're all born of pagan mothers. And when Jacob blesses his sons, he also invokes the angel that protected him on his journey, on his many decades of a journey. And so the rabbis are telling us that when we bless our sons by invoking the blessing that Jacob gave to his grandsons, we are also invoking the protective angel, the guardian angel of Jacob, as we bless our children. But here's the most important part for me of Ephraim and Menasheh. They are the first brothers who never fight. There is no sibling rivalry between them. They are the 5th generation since Abraham, and the Torah tells us that we have a chance every 5 generations to heal the family baggage. We give it to each other through the first 4 generations. But the 5th generation has a chance to heal the family stuff. And so that's exactly what happens with Ephraim and Menasheh. Somehow they never feel threatened by each other. Somehow they continue to live in peace together. They are able to take each one a part of the land of Israel when it is divided. There are no rivalry between them. And so they are seen, as we give the blessing to our sons, as also an intention, a kavanah behind it, that there will be no sibling rivalries within our people anymore. That we could heal the divides of the Jewish community wherever we find ourselves. And Lord knows there are a lot of divides between us. Yet every Friday night when we share that blessing, we hope for a time where the siblings will no longer fight each other. And I think that's true in our family as well. I mean, we can look at the Jewish family, we can look at the individual family. That these energies are energies to help us heal whatever the divisions are in our own families. And from the personal to the communal, we can even bring that blessing to the universal. That we may heal what divides the cousins. Our Muslim cousins, our Christian cousins, whatever cousins and whatever tradition they embrace. May we no longer see each other as competitors, but each of us owner of a specific piece of a puzzle that needs each of us in order to be completed. That in fact we are part of a rainbow, a tapestry, and that all parts of the tapestry are needed to beautify the work of the one. And that is the energy that is conveyed in the blessing of Ephraim and Menasheh. And may this blessing reach through the generations.